I think that's what I would like to add.
Great point about the bus drivers. I haven't even thought of that one. Thank you so much, Donna. Okay. So I mentioned that you have to have an ISP of 40% or more to operate CEP. What is the ISP? It is the number of identified students who are categorically eligible and thus directly certified for free school meals over your total student enrollment. So before we get into who's identified, this is what your ISP looks like. Number of identified categorically eligible students over your total enrollment times 100 to make it a percentage. So identified students who should be included in your ISP are ones who live in a household that participates in SNAP. If you're in California, it's CalFresh. Some states have their own names for SNAP. TANF, temporary assistance for needy families, that's the cash assistance program. The food distribution program, or colloquially known as FDIPR. And then Medicaid, if your state participates in the Medicaid Direct Cert pilot. And the important distinction here is it's only Medicaid free. So if you are a state that does Medicaid reduced as well, and you're running direct certification, Medicaid reduced students cannot be included in the ISP, but you should definitely include Medicaid free students in your ISP. So in this top category, I'm going to give a very basic example. If I, Emily, am a student in a school and I live in a household with a younger sibling, or let's say a younger cousin, and my cousin is identified by my school nutrition director as participating in SNAP, my school nutrition director will say, hey, Emily lives at the same address. They have the same parent or guardian listed on their record, and I'm going to extend that eligibility to Emily, and both are included in the ISP. So that's that household sibling matching, that's extended eligibility. In these top categories, these four, you're going to extend eligibility to anyone who lives in a household that participates in this program. So questions about that, please throw them in the Q&A. And then you're also going to include students in the ISP if they are in foster care, experiencing homelessness, often identified via the McKinney-Vento or the homeless liaison, in Head Start or early Head Start, and or if they are migrants through the migrant education program. But in this category, their eligibility doesn't extend to siblings or other household members. So by that same example, if I have a younger sibling at home who's in Head Start at my school, they'll be included in the ISP, but I won't be. Make sense? So again, there's your ISP. You have to have 40% or more to participate. So the ISP is important for eligibility, but also important for reimbursement. So to calculate your reimbursement under CEP, you're going to take your ISP, multiply it by the multiplier, which is 1.6, and that is the percentage of meals that you serve that will be reimbursed at the free rate. The remainder are reimbursed at the paid rate. So if my school has an ISP of 50% times 1.6, 80% of the meals that I serve are going to be reimbursed at the free rate that I qualify for at that school. And then the remaining 20% are going to be reimbursed at the paid rate. So everybody is always looking to get to that 62.5% because 62.5% is the ISP at which all of your meals are served and reimbursed at the federal free rate. So it's really a no-brainer to do CEP if your ISPs are that high. You can see how it might be a little more difficult to make it work if you have an ISP of just 40% and you have to get 36% of your meals reimbursed at the lower paid rate. It can be hard to make ends meet. But there are schools who do it successfully, and it is possible, and especially with grouping, which we'll get into. I also see, this is a really great question in the chat, I think from Polly, is CEP better than Provision 2? Most school nutrition directors say yes, absolutely, it's easier to run, and you don't have to track by fee category, which Provision 2 you still have to track for the first year meals served by free, reduced, and paid categories, and then those percentages averaged over the full year get applied to your next 3 years. So it's a lot of work in that base year in Provision 2. However, If your school district is one where your ISP is a lot lower than your free and reduced price meals percentage, like a lot lower, some schools find it more advantageous to do provision 2. And so we often see that case where there are districts with a high percentage of kids who come from families with immigration status who might be eligible for SNAP but not eligible to participate in the program or afraid of participating in the program. And in school districts where there may be a lot of stigma for participating in those programs. So you have eligible kids, but they're not showing up in your ISPs. And so, for example, I know a district out in Southern California that provision 2 financially works better for them, even though it's harder in that base year because their ISPs are so low because of immigration fears and stigma. So I hope that answers that question, and I'll share a resource on the comparison between the programs once I hand it over to Donna. And it's allergy season here, so if you hear me scratching and clearing my throat, that's the reason. So I mentioned grouping, and we have a webinar on grouping alone coming up. So I'm gonna send the link to the webinar soon in the chat. So if this is something that you're trying to figure out how to do in your district, is how to strategically group schools together with CEP. We have a whole webinar dedicated to the topic, but I'm gonna go over it briefly here. So I mentioned that 40% ISP threshold could be met by a group of schools, and grouping is a strategy that enables districts to either maximize their reimbursement. So if you pair a high ISP school with a low ISP school, and then they kind of meet in the middle when grouped together, then you can help to maximize your reimbursement just by strategically grouping. And it can also help to maximize participation. So if you have a school that might not be at that 40% threshold, say it's at 38% ISP, but you have a school in your districts that's at 80% ISP, grouping together, now that 38% school qualifies. And I have a very rudimentary example of how grouping works on the next slide, but I just want to flag here that Meals Count is a free online grouping calculator that was developed out of the San Diego Hunger Coalition, and it is brilliant, and it does all of the work for you, so you don't have to do by hand and try to guess which grouping is going to work best. And that's what the webinar is on. So here's a quick example of why grouping matters. So if you have 4 schools, 2 are at 40% ISP, 2 are at 85% ISP. If you group the 40% together, you're getting 36% of your meals reimbursed at that paid rate. If you're grouping the 85% schools together, or if you're adopting on their own, then you are getting all of your meals reimbursed at the free rate. If you group them together, however, 62.5%, again, that magic ISP, if you take the 85 and the 40% together and then you group them into 2 strategic groups, now all of the meals served across the whole district are reimbursed at the total free rate, none at the paid rate. So that's a very basic example of just how switching your grouping can really maximize your reimbursement. Just a few additional points for CEP this year is, again, we know that kids and families are in a really tough spot because of the pandemic and the economy and all of the crises that have been wrought by 2020. And we know that that's not something we're just going to bounce back from by the end of this year, right? We're going to feel the effects of the pandemic for a long time. And so CEP as a 4-year cycle is so great because you're going to be able to ensure that kids continue to get this essential service of free meals for all for the next 4 years. Again, I mentioned easier counting and claiming, and don't forget that that's fewer surfaces to clean and fewer things that kids are touching if they're moving through the cafeteria line this year. If they don't have to swipe IDs or use PIN pads, that's increasing sanitation and safety at the meal service. Easier training, if you're looking at meals in the classroom, at your back to school plans, and you don't have to train teachers again on how to count by fee category, big saving grace for teachers to not have to take on that role. So just some extra things that I think in light of the pandemic really point to the benefits of CEP4. So if you're sold on the benefits, then what do you do next? USDA extended the deadlines for notification and for the date by which you have to elect CEP this year. So you have to elect CEP this year by September 30th at the latest, but check with your state agency. I have a good feeling a lot of states are going to require you to adopt earlier than September 30th, given that a lot of schools are going back well before September 30th. But you do have an extended deadline, so extra time to calculate those ISPs. Run direct certification, do the extended eligibility, and talk with your McKinney-Vento liaison and other school staff who might be able to identify those students. And that data can be taken from last year, July, up through June 30th this year. So do it a couple times. Don't just wait until June 15th and then try to get all of the data. For example, if your system refreshes each month, and some states, you can't access last month's data once it turns to a new month, then you might be missing kids. And we know that these programs are in flux and kids go on and off of them. So do yourselves a favor and do it more frequently up through June 30th so that you're not crunching numbers at the very end. Then explore those groupings and talk with district leadership and sell them on it, which I know Donna's going to talk about. And we have a ton of resources. Again, I'll share links to these in the chat, but to help with talking with district administrators. So make sure to ask to include CEP in discussions on back to school. Promote it as an option that's really going to make the transition easier for everybody, as Donna mentioned, and make sure school business officials are included in the conversation, because there are some impacts on state education funding that they'll need to work out in many states, and they'll want to have some time to reconfigure their Title I allocations if that's necessary. So definitely include district administrators in this conversation, and we have lots of resources here on the slide to help you with that. Including a brief on Title I and everything that a school nutrition director might need to know about that in conversations with school business officials, and around promoting educational equity for your superintendents and administrators and all of the benefits. So please take advantage of these resources. We even have template letters that you can just plug your information into. So that being said, we're not going to Q&A next, but I do see there are some questions in the chat, so I'll be, or in the Q&A box, so I'll be sending answers. I'm sure Donna will as well. I'm going to hand it over to you, Donna, and stop sharing my screen. You should be able to pick it back up.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you, Emily. That was so informative. You stole most of my thunder, but I'm going to hopefully fill in some gaps.
Never.
Thank you, everybody, for joining today. I'll just tell you, I think CEP is the next best thing to ice cream. We have been doing it 8 years here in Burke County. And when I first came on, we were doing Provision 2, and we were taking applications and begging everybody and doing all this stuff. And once we went to CEP, honestly, I think we recruit teachers easier and better because they like the benefits of it so much. Just to tell you a little bit about the district that I'm in, I'm a very large rural district in Georgia. You can tell by my accent. And we have about 4,300 students. We have 5 schools. And we offer every single program that USDA offers. And that's the beauty of CEP, is you're eligible for all kinds of things. You're eligible for better Title I things. Your E-rate is always good. You qualify better for fresh fruit and vegetable grant. So it just opens so many doors for you. And it definitely has for us over the last 8 years. So this is our year to requalify. So we've qualified twice, and I just sent all my information in, and I'm going to share with you a little bit about how we do our qualifications and how we find all of our students, because that is definitely the trick and the clue to doing it. So what is it that I like so much about CEP? Well, when I first decided about whether or not we were going to do CEP, I looked at the numbers, and we increased in revenue our very first year $300,000 by the difference in Provision 2 and CEP. And there's calculators out there that will share with you how to look at what your revenue will look like. So it was absolutely a no-brainer for us. And so by increasing that revenue, I was able to give our kids that much better food. I was able to get more equipment. So there are lots of advantages, and it's easy to sell to your school district, but you really have to go and sit down with the school board and talk to them, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and a lot of school districts are afraid of doing it. They think that they're going to lose their Title I schools, the different rankings, and they worry about that. So you have to really sit down and share with them. And sometimes you just have them call another district that has CEP and talk to the superintendent or talk to the Title I director and make sure that they are comfortable in doing it. And when they don't really believe you, because they may think you're just trying to do it for your own financial gain and that it's going to hurt the school district. So I think doing that really helps. Not having applications to process in your office is amazing. And think about the time that you can save and put into menu planning and all kinds of other things, doing farm to school, anything else. And the fact that none of your applications are approved incorrectly, isn't that nice when you have your review, that you don't have to worry about them saying this was done wrong? You don't have to go back and double check anybody's application. When verification season comes along, guess what? You're sitting back easy peasy because you don't have to do it, not one single verification. When they come for the administrative review, they actually just go through your, they take a certain percentage of your CEP numbers and double check them, and they double check that the applications, that the CEP names match up with SNAP and all these other kinds. So you do have to do that, but that's so much simpler than pulling out applications. You know, I hated nagging the kids to turn in applications. So we would do stuff like, if everybody turned in their application, you got a cookie, you know. And then the poor teachers, I would be nagging them, and they'd be having to nag the parents to turn applications. The teachers are not involved in CEP at all. So that is, and neither are the students, which is so wonderful. Everything is done behind the scenes. You know, I think for the parents not having to worry about, oh my gosh, I sent my kid to school today and I didn't send any lunch money. They don't get the call from the school to bring in lunch money. The kid doesn't come home and say, oh, mom, you forgot to send my lunch money. And then the staff doesn't have to prepare alternate meals like those cheese sandwiches or peanut butter sandwiches. And your staff doesn't have to pull a meal out of a child's hand because they owe $25. You don't have to go to the district at the end of the year and say, you know, you owe me $200,000 because that's what our debt is, and you have to pay it because I cannot pay it. You know, filing the claim for CEP is so easy because it's just the number of kids that eat based on your percentage, and it is really, really easy, and it creates less claiming areas. And then I love the fact that there's no stigma about who gets free lunch. We have so many problems in some of our districts where the kids are like, I don't want, you know, I'm embarrassed to say that I get free lunch. So they just don't eat. They just absolutely say, I'm not hungry. You know, they're embarrassed. So it just totally takes all of that away. And the teachers don't have to worry about the kids forgetting their lunch money, or anybody stealing somebody's lunch money, or forgetting their lunch bag at home. Because if they forget, even if they bring their lunch and they forget their lunch bag, they can still go through the line and eat for free. You don't have to collect debt. Your lines run so much faster. So what I love about it is my cashiers, you can either just do a clicker. You can just click as the kids go by. That is so fast. So for when we do breakfast in the classroom and we do grab and go, we just click the students and it speeds up the line so much. So if you're trying to get breakfast in the classroom, or you're trying to get grab and go breakfast, this is another thing when you have CEP that the principals and the teachers like it so much better, because the kids can, you know, for us, the kids say their name or give us their numbers. We actually do track them that way because we want to keep up with the allergies and things like that, but you don't have to. And also, I'm telling you, as a school nutrition director, our meals are so much healthier than anything those kids bring from home. Unless your mother is a registered dietitian and does a bento box, the meals are going to be healthier at school. So I love the fact that we're ensuring our kids get the healthiest food by everybody eating free.
I just want to say I've eaten at Donna's district, and I can attest that those meals were delicious and healthy. And because you can reinvest so much of the money that you've generated from CEP back into the health of the program. So
yes, thank you, Emily. Thank you. So how do we get our numbers up? So what we do is we ask our records person to give us a master file. And actually now I have access that I can just download a district-wide master file, and I put it into Excel and I sort it. First, I sort it by the parent's name. And when I find a parent name that has 2 or 3 or 4 kids under that parent's name, I double check to see if any of those kids are on food stamps, and if they are, then I make sure the rest of the kids qualify and I add them. So I sort by parent, and then I go back and sort by address. And so if I have 2 kids at 200 Bell Avenue, if there's 3 or 4 or 5 kids in the house and 1 kid qualifies, I make sure I include all the other kids. So I think this year we picked up about 10 to 15% of our kids by doing the extending them based on addresses and parents. And guys, I do that more than once, because at the beginning of the year, they may live at one place, and then 3 months later, they live someplace else. So if you redo the address list and resort it, guess what? Kids have moved in together and parents have picked up other kids, and they didn't used to live together, but they live together now and they qualify. So keep doing it. Don't just do it that one time. The other thing you can do is you can just send out a survey to the parents, not an application, but just a survey, and say, look, tell me who all lives in your house, and do you get food stamps? So they may say, I might say, yeah, I get food stamps, and I've got these 8 kids in my house. And then you can go and look them up and qualify all those kids. We at the beginning of the year match every month at least, and during the whole year we continue to match monthly. And every time we find a new kid, we go back and double check their address to see if anybody else lives with them, and we check who else is living in the house according to the parent, because inevitably we pick up more kids extended that way. I am very close-knit and up close and personal with all my liaisons, because I make sure they understand how important it is for them to give me the list of the fosters, the migrants, and the runaways, because I tell them how it impacts our system. And when they understand how it impacts our system in terms of school nutrition getting money, computers and tech getting that E-rate up, Title I money, they're all in and they are very vested in it. So they are really, really good about sharing that stuff. And then the other thing is, you always get a list. When you get the list of matches, you get all these unmatches. Well, my families have a real bad habit of their being born Donna Martin, and then they change their name to Donna Johnson. Well, they're on the list as Donna Martin, but they're on my school system as Donna Johnson. So start looking up to see the ones that are close. And usually, 90% of the time I can figure out who that kid is, and I can justify why they're on food stamps and pick them up, which is really, really helpful. Sometimes their social security number is an 800 number, it's not complete, or they don't have one, or their birthday is wrong. It's one way at food stamps and one way in our system, and almost always you can figure that out. So I like to say that schools are the ultimate safety net. And I really, really believe during this pandemic, that is what we have been so good about, and that CEP can really make that happen, because once you're on CEP, you qualify for every single program. And so I think it is, if you're in school nutrition, you're in it because you understand food insecurity, and you understand that this year has been really, really tough on our kids academically and mentally. And I really, really do believe that my next mantra is really important, that I believe that we have to have healthy, not hungry kids, because kids, in order to learn, have to not just have food, guys, they have to have healthy food. And that is what we do so well in school nutrition. And this picture here of these little girls, this was taken in the summer by one of our bus drivers, and the kids were coming to the bus. And what I love about this picture, if you can look in the pictures, what are they eating? An apple. All 4 of those kids came to the bus eating the apples that they had gotten in their lunch bags the day before. That is healthy food. Whereas in the past, my kids would have been coming, or might be in the neighborhood eating potato chips or something like that. So I think that is really important. And then for a lot of people, they're worried about what is in their food. They're worried about non-GMO and having clean food and all that kind of stuff. For my families, they're worried about having food, and not just food, but healthy food. So I think that's what's so great about doing CEP, is that we can ensure our kids don't just have food, but they have healthy food. And in Georgia this year, Feeding America has estimated that the child food insecurity rate has increased by 39% since 2018. So our job has become even more important than it has ever been. So with CEP, you can become what I call a nutrition hub. And a nutrition hub means you offer every single program that is available to families, to school nutrition programs out there. And by doing that, you increase your revenue. So when you're using your ovens to do breakfast and lunch and supper and summer feeding, you get much more use out of them and you get much more revenue coming in. And it is just so wonderful. So I'm going to talk to you about all these different programs and how CEP works so well with all of these programs. You know, if you've had trouble getting breakfast after what we call breakfast after the bell, I think the pandemic gave you a real in order to get that, because I know we've been doing it for years here in Burke County. And when we first started, our teachers were like, no, I don't want it. Our principals like, no, I don't want it. But once we started it, we could not drag it out of the classroom. But this year with the pandemic, everybody wanted to start doing it. So if you haven't jumped on that bandwagon, you need to. So whether you serve it in the cafeteria or in the classroom, or you do grab and go in the halls as the kids go down the hall, people do it on the bus. And when you do it on the bus, if you have CEP, it's really easy because you click, click, click. You don't have to take names or anything. If you have a kiosk set out there, or you do it at mid-morning break, any way you can increase your participation. And breakfast pays very, very well, and your costs for breakfast are much lower than your costs for lunch. So this is a great way to increase your revenue, but it's also a great way. And this is how I sell it to the principals. I said, I want to make sure I give you all your teachers' kids ready to learn. And they're not ready to learn unless they've had breakfast. So doing any kind of opportunity like this really helps. And so what are the great things about doing breakfast in the classroom is that, you know, a lot of kids get up on my district, they get up and they get on the bus at 6 o'clock in the morning. They don't want to be eating breakfast at 5:30 in the morning. The parents aren't even there to feed them breakfast or get them breakfast. So it makes sure that they have time to eat in school. And they get to eat in a loving, quiet environment in the classroom versus going down to the lunchroom. And what are they doing in the lunchroom? They're yelling at them, hurry up, somebody else has got to take your place. Hurry up. You know, they're just, and they don't also feel comfortable going down there. You're going to send a 4-year-old down to the class, down to the lunchroom with 500 kids that expect them to go eat breakfast. They will not do it. So, you know, the more kids, that way you ensure if you do it after the bell or in the classroom or whatever, that everybody gets to eat. It increases participation. And children, if the buses are late, you don't care. The food is in the classroom and they can always get it. And you don't have to worry about kids being tardy because they have more time. They get there for breakfast and then they're not tardy for school. They're not in the lunchroom hanging around or you know, going through the line and taking too much time. And it improves classroom performance. We know study after study shows that if you eat breakfast, you do better in school. You make more money. And my teachers, what they love about it is they get to know the students. They get to talk to them. They get to hear about their personal life. And once that bell rings at 8 o'clock, they don't have time to do that. So they love that about developing those relationships. And what we've learned about COVID is those relationships are even more important than they've ever been. And breakfast after the bell really, really helps that. No more kids going to the nurse's office for stomach aches. Everybody gets to eat breakfast. You don't, not just the free kids. And it only takes 7 to 15 minutes to eat. So even if it cuts a little bit into the school time, it doesn't take that long. And my staff loves the fact that you don't have to clean your serving line. So that's a way to sell it to them. What I love about the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Grant, that's my very favorite program because it teaches nutrition education and it exposes kids to the most amazing food. And this is one of our Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Grant calendars. And what I love about CEP is that your percentage, a free and reduced percentage, is usually higher than it would be. And you have a better chance of getting the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Grant. And these are some pictures of our kids eating star fruit and pomegranates and local peaches and jicama and all these different foods. And we do a lot of nutrition education with this in terms of teaching the kids about what all these fresh fruits and vegetables are. And we're now sending them home in our boxes. We do them in summer feeding, and I love this program. So do you serve supper? You can with CEP. And what I love about supper is that my kids never want to stay after school for tutoring. And our kids come to school, and they come and they eat lunch at 10:30 in the morning, and then they're late. So we do the supper program, and we can offer it to every club, every 21st century, to the chorus, to anybody. You can do it right after school. You can do it right before the buses go home. You can do a hot meal. You can do a cold super snack. It is available to anybody when you do CEP. And what's great about it is that the kids don't want to come for after school, but when you do supper, they want to come to after school programming. So it has increased our test scores because our kids stay for tutoring. It has increased our football team. We won our first ever state football championship after we started the supper program. And the coach credited the school nutrition program with the win because he said he had malnourished kids, and now they were not malnourished anymore. So I love that. It decreases behavioral problems after school, and it allows them to focus on the enrichment activities, and it helps the parents. When the kids get home, they have done their homework and they have had supper, and it makes for a much more pleasant environment when they get home. And so sometimes the programs may have been helping pay for supper, and now they don't have to pay for supper if you offer supper for them. So it helps free up money for them so they can do better enrichment activities and hire more teachers. And my employees love the extra hours. So it's another benefit, because you have to sell this to everybody, not just the principal and the school board. You have to sell it to the school nutrition staff too. Summer feeding. Oh my gosh, with summer feeding, there were so many options that you can do with summer feeding. With CEP though, it's great. Everybody in your district qualifies. Usually if you do countywide, we do countywide CEP, but if not, if you group schools, a school that may not have qualified before, they might have been 40% like Emily talked about, and you group them with a 60%, now they qualify for summer feeding. So there's so many options. Do it on the bus, do it bags, do weekly, do pickup. I love that cooler idea. That was the school district. They put coolers in people's yards and they kept stealing them. So they actually had to bolt them down to the mailboxes so that they could put the food in there. But there's so many options in doing summer feeding. And what we did was we had 30 bus routes and we had 900 bus stops. We did it out of 2 kitchens. We fed 4,000 kids a day. We did 750,000 meals, and we drove 115,000 miles, and we were offering breakfast, lunch, and snack in our bags every single day to the kids. So there's so much you can do when you have CEP. This is the coolers. Look at the coolers on the right-hand side slide. That was what it looked like at the break of dawn when we were out there getting ready. And that's we got maintenance staff to help us load the buses. So it was a real undertaking, but it provided the families with the food they needed, and it provided me with the funding that I needed. And so what are we doing this summer, and what have we been doing all year long? We've been doing virtual meal boxes and meal kits, and I love this idea. We have 25% of our families that are still virtual. So we do 1,000 of these boxes every week. We do 5 days of breakfast, lunch, snack, and supper. And we give 2 half gallons of milk, 10 4-ounce frozen fruit juices that serve as ice cubes in the boxes. We do 15 servings of fresh fruits, 15 servings of fresh vegetables. We do 20 to 25 ounces of meat, 25 to 30 ounces of whole grains, 5 days of snacks, and other frozen juices. So you can see the boxes, what they look like. These boxes, that's one of the boxes when you take it all apart, what it looks like if you take it out. And that's our student helpers loading the boxes into the families' cars. But we have become like the Blue Apron of Burke County, teaching these families how to cook and how to eat. And I highly recommend, if you haven't thought about getting student help, they have been a lifesaver. They have great backs. They're never out sick. They don't have kids at home that are sick. They come to work every day, and they're eager to work, and they get paid minimum wage, and they're grateful for it. And we have really, really enjoyed having student help. So we feel like we are building healthy bears here in Burke County. And I love this sign that says, I will feed you in a room. I will feed you in your house. I will feed you here and there. I will feed you because I care. So CEP allows us to care about all our kids, whether they qualify or don't qualify. And it has been the best thing that we've ever done. So I encourage you to try your hardest to see if you can do CEP. And if you're interested in seeing any of we have free resources that we do in all our meal kits and enrichment activities and all that kind of stuff. If you want to go to our website, you'll have access to all kinds of nutrition education materials. But I hope you'll consider doing it. And if you need help, you can call me. My email address was in the beginning of the slides. I'll be glad to help anybody, walk you through the process, talk to you about talking to the principals. But like I said, it is a win-win for every single person. There are no losers in the CEP process. So Emily, I think we have a little bit of time for questions.
Sure do, and we have lots of questions already. And Tam and I have been working our way through answering them. So if you click on the Q&A box, everyone who's attending, feel free to look through the answered questions, but we're going to read some aloud and answer some aloud. And so, Donna, could you share a little bit more about your Title I funding? And you said that it improved when you switched to CEP. I want to call attention, I put in the chat a resource on Title I and CEP that's kind of a primer and shows you the relationship between CEP and Title I. I think the biggest thing to know, districts, the allocation that a district gets does not change because that's based on census data. It is not based on free and reduced price data. So what might change is how a district allocates the money from the big fund to each school. And you can use ISP, you can use ISP times 1.6. If you're doing CEP in some schools and not in the others, you can do the ISP times 1.6 in your CEP schools and use the free and reduced price rate in your non-CEP schools, or you could just look at SNAP data. So there's lots of ways to do it, but can you share about how your district's experience was?
Yeah, and what I meant by it improved is we had a high school that never qualified for Title I. And once we did CEP, they qualified for Title I, and they had not been getting Title I money in the past. I don't know why. The difference was we got our application numbers up. And in Georgia, you have to be 75% free and reduced in order to qualify for Title I. And so we got their numbers up when we did CEP. But what happens is you look at the percentage of your ISP for every single school, and they're ranked. And so the school that has the highest ISP gets the most Title I funding. And so what happened was we needed our primary school to get the highest because it needed the most parapros and the most funding. And so when we did the CEP, all of our pre-K kids automatically qualified for food stamps and qualified for, and it allowed us to increase our percentage in the primary school. So it put them higher up. So they were able to get the funding that they need. They had fallen behind and another school was getting better funding. So once we did CEP, it moved them up somehow and they got, the funding was better. So our district benefited from it. I don't know if that makes sense, Emily.
Yeah, when you're changing up the data that you're using to do that ranking and serve process, it might kind of shuffle the order a bit on which schools get Title I funding, but that is something that your financial or your business officer, whatever they call them in your state or your district, can work through. And there's lots of guidance from the Department of Ed on how to do this process and what to do in the event of CEP. So I'll dig up that guidance too while we're answering the next question, so that if your school business official wants to see, I need more information on how to do this, they can see it straight from the source from the Department of Ed.
Because see, like our high school students never qualified for food stamps, but they had a brother or sister that were on food stamps. So that allowed them to be put on food stamps. So that increased the high school percentages. So it got our percentages up also by doing the extended in the high school. That's always your lowest category.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so I think this is more of a logistical question, but how do you document your household matches? I know on the forms in some states you put like HE for household eligibility or extension? How does
Right.
it work?
So our software allows us to, when we put somebody in that they have CEP, it allows us to say if they're food stamp or they're an extended, and then we print out from the screen, from our Power School screen, we print out the address of both the whoever originally was on food stamps and this person. If the parents are the same, we print out both screens so that we have the match. If it's both addresses, so we have both addresses. So we print out both documents right then and there, because see, 6 months down the road, they may move out of that household. And if you go back into the Power School, they may not be in that same address. So we print it out at the time that we match them. So once we get them, but it also in our program, we use Lunchbox or Mosaic, and it allows in our programming to put that they're extended, and then we automatically print out the forms. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we have that
So
documentation.
I would definitely, there we go. I would definitely check with your state agency to ask procedurally how you need to mark which one's a household match, but there's definitely a process. So
but that's what we do. I mean, we know who the original one is. We clip, we clip paper, and we asked them what to do, and that was what they suggested, to print out the screens.
Great. And I think related to that, we had a question about if you identify someone, Donna, in October, but then you're getting ready to apply for CEP in April and they're not on the list anymore, how do you include them in your ISP?
Yes.
And how do you mark that?
Yes. So once they qualify, they're qualified for the whole year. And so we see the way in Georgia, we get a list, and they're on there permanently. Once they qualify, they stay on the list that we get from the State Department. But you can print out your list, and then you have your documentation. So wherever you get that name from or wherever that list is, I would print that out immediately. Once they qualify, no matter whether they qualified July 1st or April 1st, they're qualified for the whole year. But you've got to print it out when you see them. It's like what you said earlier, Emily, you've got to print it out right then and there so you have the documentation. But they qualify for the whole year, even if they're gone later on, it doesn't matter. And their brothers and siblings, anybody in that household qualifies then for the whole year.
And keep that source documentation, because if they're going to validate your ISP and the kids included in the ISPs, and again, every state does this a little bit differently, but if they go and check and that kid's not showing up in the system anymore and you didn't save the source documentation, they're probably going to ask you to not include them in the ISP. So make sure you just print out those source documents and save them somewhere so that you can show the state agency if something comes into question, how you verified them. Good question here. Is there a magic ISP?
62.5. 62.5 is the magic ISP. That gives you 100%. That's anything above 62.5. But you can do it at less. You can do it at less. And a lot of school districts, Emily, have gone to their school board and said, look, let me just tell you what all the advantages of, and I may only have 55%, and I may not be able to quite make it on 55%, but I've looked at my budget, and if you're willing to like give me $50,000 or something like that to make up the difference, sometimes the school boards are willing to do that just to get the benefits for the families and the teachers, just for those teachers not to have to deal with lunch money and kids not bringing their lunches and the nurses not have to deal with it, and just making the whole day run so much smoother. Lots of school districts are willing to say, if you get in the hole this year and you cannot make it, I'm willing to give you the money to make up the difference. And they may have been in the hole to begin with. They may not have been, they may have already been getting money from the district. So, but 62.5 is magic, but exactly, a lot of people can make it at 45 and 50. And a lot of times school districts are willing to make up the difference. Absolutely.
Yeah. It really depends on your goals, and 62.5% is great if you can get it, but it's not realistic for many districts and they still operate CEP just fine. So you have to think about all those benefits, and if you can increase participation enough to cover what you would otherwise might lose if your participation stayed the same when adopting CEP. Those are the kinds of scenario planning, and every district's going to have their own unique circumstances to think through those pros and cons, I guess, of adopting. And I do want to mention that we are developing with another school nutrition director, former school nutrition director from San Francisco Unified out in California. She did CEP in that district. She's brilliant and very good at technology and Excel and building mathematical models. And she's built this new CEP calculator that will be ready next week. And so we're going to do another webinar on that as soon as it's ready, but it will allow you to compare standard counting and claiming, the revenues you can expect by school, by district with CEP, and then you can play with the numbers and change your participation rates and see what the impacts are going to be in each school and in your district overall. So hopefully that will be a big help to districts as they're trying to assess their finances if you're new to CEP. And I put my email in the chat, so if you want to get it as soon as it's ready, I'd be happy to send you an email. Just send me an email and let me know that you're looking for the calculator. And happy to help with anything related to CEP and connect you with Donna and our other school nutrition experts too. So please, if there's anything we can help with beyond this webinar, don't hesitate to reach out. Would love to talk. Okay, so if you're currently serving SFSP, you are not currently serving CEP, correct? So two different programs, and if you're doing SFSP right now, which many are, that's not the National School Lunch Program. It's a separate program, and CEP applies to the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program. So they're two separate programs. Not having the income information. Have districts seen a drop in letter grade for campuses accountability? Okay. This is a great question, Kay. And I think what you're getting at is ESSA and your state accountability plans around students who are economically disadvantaged and their progress that they make. So states are required to kind of document those economically disadvantaged students across their education to make sure that they're making gains and not falling behind. And that's part of the Every Student Succeeds Act, the ESSA plan. And so I don't know if you can talk about this, Donna, about what your district did, but essentially what happens with CEP is you're not just looking at free and reduced price kids, you're looking at only the ones who are identified. So the number of kids that districts follow might change when you switch to CEP because the free and reduced price category is bigger than the identified student percentage category, if that makes sense. And so you're still able to do accountability. You're just tracking the kids who are identified via your ISP as opposed to every kid, unless you're one of those states that does the alternative income forms and you still have income forms for everyone. So there's a couple states that require you, even if you are CEP, to make sure that students and their families fill out those household income forms. And then you still have individualized income data that you can use for ESSA accountability purposes. But if you're not one of those states, you would just look at the identified students. Anything, Donna, from your end that?
No, we don't really, I mean, when our district talks about, they talk about that we're 100% free and reduced. And when they compare us, you know, to other districts and they look at our rankings and stuff, they use that 100% free and reduced. So I'm not really familiar with them picking up on the identified students. They've never asked me to identify the students or anything. So I don't know how they do that, Emily.
It might be in your state that other people in your district have access to that direct certification system and they can know?
No. Mm-mm.
Well, I don't know how Georgia does ESSA accountability, but
yeah, I don't either.
I know that's come up in a handful of other states of how do we continue to make sure we're identifying the kids who are economically disadvantaged and ensuring that their educational experience is an equitable one and be able to document that. And they've just,
I know we look at equity, and that's a big thing that we look at. But I think it's more looking in along racial lines with equity and that kind of with discipline and things like that. So, but I've not heard, and nobody else has access to that information. So I don't, I'll check into that though.
Okay. And if this is something that's coming up in your district too, feel free. Again, my email's there. I'd be happy to do some digging and see if we have some examples of districts who've overcome this challenge in your area that might be able to talk with your superintendents or principals. I know this has been a holdup by some administrators or concerns around SS. So, and if I didn't answer your question correctly, if you were trying to get at something else, let me know. Just send it in the chat or in the Q&A. So how do you respond, Donna, to increased food waste and concerns from parents or teachers or administrators around that?
Well, that's a great question. We have very little food waste. I think the main problem with food waste is not enough time to eat at meals. And so that's what's great about breakfast in the classroom is they have more time to eat. Lunch, they're hurrying them up. We also do offer versus serve. So our kids, when they come through the line, and you witness that, Emily, yourself, when you come through the line, you get to pick and choose. So our kids, you know, they have to pick up a fruit or a vegetable, but we have so many great fruits and vegetables out there that they can usually find something that they want to eat. So I think the offer versus serve significantly decreases food waste. And then I also think having enough time to eat does that. Then the other thing is sometimes all of us go through and get more food. Our eyes are bigger than our stomach and we just can't eat it all. And so at that point, there is some food waste. But I think by having more time and offering a lot of choices, and we offer a lot of entree choices, milk choices, fruits and vegetable choices, anybody can find what they want. And we have our menus online so they know before they come to school if there's something that they're going to want to eat at school. So I think we have very low food waste. And if anything, it's because of the kids picking more than they can possibly eat. When you look at their trays, there's just so many good choices that they want to eat it all and they can't.
Yeah. I can relate to that. When I remember going off to college at Penn State, I was a student and the dining halls had so much, I mean, huge campus with so many different dietary preferences and cultures represented that I would go through and get everything.
I know.
Like, I can't eat all this, but it all looked so good at the time. So
right.
Happens to us all. Yeah, offer versus serve, huge. I see we have a hand raised, and I'm not sure. Amanda, I will allow you to unmute. We've got a bunch of people raising hands, so I'll allow you to unmute yourself. Or now they're going down. People are testing. Patty, if you would like to raise your hand and ask a question aloud, go ahead and do that. And then I will click allow to talk, and then you should be able to unmute yourself and ask a question aloud. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for you, Patty, and press allow to talk. Feel free to unmute yourself. And just jump in. Tam, go ahead.
Yeah, while we're waiting on that, I just wanted to add to the food waste that when this comes up, I think it's also helpful to talk about the fact that this is a problem in our country in general. That we waste about 40% of our food across the board, it's not just a problem with schools. So I think it's sometimes unfairly pinned on schools when it's really, it's a problem in our whole country.
Yep, and I just gave you a case study using my own personal self, not a student in an elementary school, but a grown adult who can't control her appetite at a buffet line. So yeah, it's not limited to schools, and there is no shortage of waste that we should be paying attention to, not just in schools. Ooh, this is a great question. Are there arguments that work better for principals versus Department of Ed or others, maybe Board of Education, in selling CEP? So what are your best arguments for your different administrators, Donna?
I really think the idea that the fact that your teachers do not have to deal with lunch money, do not have to deal with collecting lunch money, do not have to deal with collecting checks, do not have to deal with checks that have bounced. They don't have to deal with the kid forgetting their lunch. The lines run so much smoother. I think for principals, the the teacher thing, teachers are so overburdened right now. They are so stressed out. And anytime you can alleviate any kind of problems from them, and we do breakfast in the classroom, and we give all our teachers a free breakfast because we want them to model to the kids eating breakfast in the classroom, and they really like that. But I think having a principal call another principal at another school district that has CEP is a very powerful tool. And that's how I got breakfast in the classroom. I had them call other school districts that were doing it, and they talked them into it, because I think they always think that you have ulterior motives, which we kind of do, but our ulterior motives are it's great for the kids and it's the best thing that we know all the answers. But I think that that's what I would recommend.
I'm going to ask another question. And folks, I know we're at our overtime by now, but I know I don't have to run. Donna, do you have to run?
No.
We'll stay and talk about CEP for a while. I'm going to ask another question. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to pull up some resources that I had kind of previewed earlier, just as links on the slides, which I shared the link to the slide deck in the chat. But we have some really great resources on what are the talking points you should include in talking to principals and administrators, and Donna highlighted a few, but truly you can copy and paste whatever you see in our resources into emails, have them printed out as notes ready if you're giving a presentation. So don't feel like you have to go this alone, and I'm going to pull up some and show you on my screen. But
I just saw a question from Trish. I'll answer that about the free breakfast thing. It counts just like, because the teachers help with doing marking the kids that eat and stuff. We have a roster of the kids that eat. So it's just like giving your custodians free lunch for helping you in the cafeteria cleaning up. You're allowed to give teachers free breakfast or whatever, because they're helping you, assisting you in counting and claiming. So Georgia allows that. So that was a question. And yeah, I love that what she said about that no overt identification. And I think that is huge. And you know what, you may think, we've noticed during the pandemic that a lot of our families that never in the past have needed help now need help, and they're too embarrassed to ask for it. So when you have CEP, everybody gets help. And so it's you don't have to rely on somebody swallowing their pride and saying, oh, I need to eat a free meal now, or I need to apply for free meals, because everybody, all they have to say is, I like the school lunch today and I want to eat it. So, but I think that was a great note of the overt identification is huge.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Imelda, for sharing that. And since we're talking about equity right now, this is a brand new resource that we just created. I will copy and paste the link here into the chat. You can print this out and share it with your district administrators. It's about educational equity as it relates to CEP. And so highlights really simply here a lot of the benefits we've talked about: removing the application barrier, huge for families with immigration status, huge for families who don't speak English as a primary language, huge for all families. They don't have to worry about filling out this application to be able to feed their children. So reducing stigma, eliminating debt. This is something you can just print and hand to them. And the second page has some research on all of the studies are cited below of how CEP has shown to improve student academic behavior, behavioral outcomes, food security and nutrition outcomes, and school staff and budgets. So this is a quick 2-pager we can share. Here's a talking points for school administrators. So again, just more lists of talking points. You can feel free to copy paste these in emails. And there's a customizable letter that will download as a Word document, and you can print and just add in your specifics here. Got to bring it to this screen. We've done some of the work for you. So just wanted to highlight these opportunities. And if there's anything else that you may need, we're happy to help draft language or even reach out to your school administrators. And so great to see, Angelica, that you will be looking at Larchmont Charter Schools' ability to qualify for CEP. Please let us know if we can help. had some more questions come in. I just love this participation, so keep them coming.
I'll go ahead and answer the one about Georgia teachers. No, school nutrition pays for the teachers to eat because it's an allowable expense, just like I mentioned about, as long as they're, like all my staff gets to eat free breakfast and free lunch, and because they're working in the program, and the teachers are considered working in the program when they're helping distribute breakfast and mark off students and things like that. So the general fund does not have to pay for it. School nutrition pays for it. And because when the teachers eat, the kids eat, so it increases your participation. And the question about saving money on purchasing, you definitely can, because when your volume increases because you're doing more meals and feeding more kids, then you certainly can save money. And a lot of school districts, we're having trouble finding vendors to provide food for us, but because I do supper and summer feeding and everything, a couple of the vendors who've dropped other districts who don't do supper and summer feeding and don't feed year round have been willing to continue to work with me to feed, because I feed year round and I do more volume. So they have continued. So I have much more competition, whereas these other districts only have one vendor because they only feed, a short period of time. So I feel like I've definitely saved more money that way.
Had to grab a phone charger. I'm using my phone as a hotspot here, and I saw was going to die and we'd all be kicked off the webinar. So
good
why
thinking.
I'm on video for a second. Tam, do you want to share any about the study that you put in the chat and that you may have co-authored?
Yeah, so this was just published a few days ago. It's about a study that was done about CEP in Maryland. And some of the results from that study show that there's lower student stigma and morale among staff improves with CEP, which are things we've, I think Donna already touched on today. Also, we found that once a school decides to adopt CEP, the actual process of implementing it is very simple. The getting to that point is not always simple, but it's actually a streamlining and simplifying program. And then another point from the study is also, I think, something that Emily mentioned earlier, which is that school administrators in neighboring districts often are very helpful in speaking to people in your district about CEP and helping them to understand how the program works. So the link is in the chat. You can check it out.
Awesome. Thank you, Tam. And there was one question that we already answered. I'm digging for here. Something about here. What happens if families are somewhat borderline and then economic conditions improve, household income improves, and then when you go to recertify, your ISP goes down? Do you have any experience with this, Donna?
Yes, I have other school districts that has happened in around the state. So one thing you can do is you can pick, like if you have like 12 schools, you can pick 1 or 2 schools that maybe, have had a lower ISP, and you can just take them off the program and leave the other 10 school districts on. The other thing is, by then your school district has gotten so attached to doing CEP that you can go to your school board and say, look, this is such an amazing program and I don't want to stop it, but I'm going to need X amount of money to continue the program. And usually they will, once you do it, they see the value of it. But I have seen school districts that have just, maybe 1 or 2 school districts in the area, and they've had to just take them out of the mix. It may have been a school district that had 35% or 40% CEP or something, and they just dropped them off the program. The neighboring county just did that. They dropped 3 of their 58 schools off the program and they were able to continue. So you just have to pick and choose then.
Which is definitely hard.
It is.
And I think I'm just going to there's a resource on the CEP Grace Year, which allows you to kind of do a 5th year, but at newer ISPs, even if you don't qualify. So there's some information about the Grace Year and how it works at that research brief. But I think this is what we saw in general as the trend. So CEP became available nationwide 2014-2015 school year. Economy was worse off then. There were higher ISPs. And then when people were looking to recertify 4 years later, ISPs had fallen and people were worried. And then pandemic hit and everything kind of blew back up. So I think it's definitely a possibility and one that you have to consider if you look at your numbers in your 4th year and it's not as high. But I would also encourage, if you have the opportunity, which maybe Tam could share a little bit about this as well, if you as a school nutrition department or a school as a whole can do some SNAP outreach in those 4 years, like encourage families to sign up for SNAP and talk about the benefits and have it included in regular communications with families. That might be a way to help boost your numbers over time, and definitely kind of more of a proactive way of maximizing your ISP and encouraging eligible families to get signed up. And if there's anyone at the school who can help, direct to applications or answer questions. Pam, do you want to talk about SNAP outreach?
I would love to, although the mail carrier just came and my dogs are going crazy. So I apologize. Oh, and now they stopped. It's lovely. Okay. Yes, but please, I will put my email in the chat. I'd be happy to send more information about SNAP outreach and how we can help make sure that kids in your schools are connected to SNAP.
And Emily, I need to go. We have a school board meeting and I've got to go do some bid openings. I'm sorry, but it has been an absolute pleasure. And please, if anybody needs any help, just email me or call me and I'll be glad to help. Best of luck, guys. Thanks.
And I'll stay on I saw another question came through. So Tim and I can stay on, and yeah, Donna is phenomenal, amazing, and we are happy to connect you with her. So if you want to talk more one-on-one with Donna, or get her to talk to your principal and other staff about what's so great about CEP, she would be happy to. So please do feel free to reach out to me and Tam, and we'll connect you guys. Resources on best practices for communicating with families or ideas. If the person who asked this question could specify on communicating the benefits of CEP and encouraging participation, or what you mean by communicating, I think we'll be able to answer the question a little bit better. I'll say in general, if you're new to CEP and you're just adopting, and you're adopting district-wide, it's huge to promote the program and to really work with your key messengers. Who do families listen to? Who's talking to families regularly? Go to board meetings, go to teachers, in-house staff meetings, and say, make sure that when you're talking to parents, remind them that free meals are free for all this year. When you're talking to kids, remind them that meals are free for all this year. Social media, obviously huge. Anything around the back to school communications, the packets of information you send to families, definitely just ingrain the meal program in that communication. I think we've had districts have a lot of success in making sure just that everyone on the school, from the school administration, from the superintendent down to your child's teacher, is on message about doing 3 meals for all this year. And so it's kind of surround sound, I think, is one of the best ways. If you're doing partial CEP, so only some schools in your district are doing CEP and others are not, that's when it becomes a little bit trickier, right? To really do an on blast message that meals are free for all this year, but only in these schools. So I will say that you're probably going to want to work on messaging as to why it's not all schools, and really just these schools don't qualify. It's a federal program, and we would love to extend this to all students, but unfortunately not all of our schools in our district qualify. We think it's really important to extend this benefit to the schools that do. There's probably going to be parents who are confused by it, so getting everyone on message to that reality, if you're only doing partial CEP, I think that's something to keep in mind. There was one more thing that I wanted to share, and it's escaping me now. Tam, do you, if your mailman has left, do you have anything to add about communicating with families?
Well, we have some information in the toolkits, so check that out as well. I think if you didn't already say that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I did not. Are you referring to the SNAP toolkit?
So we have the SNAP toolkit, which does talk a little bit about CEP, and then we also have a CEP one pager that talks about how CEP is beneficial. And I will look for that and put it in the chat.
And I wish I knew exactly where to find this on my computer right now. But if you want more information on this, email me. There's a school district that does CEP in Texas that had this brilliant campaign, posting posters all over their school and sending information to their, thank you, Tam, to their families, and promoting this. If they're doing offer versus serve, you have to do offer versus serve to do this pick 3 free idea. And so it's, maybe you're still packing your lunch, but you can come to school and you can pick a fruit, a vegetable, and a milk for free. So, or just a couple components of that standard lunch. And they framed it as, pack your kids' entree and let us do the rest. And the idea behind it was to get kids who were packing their lunch to also participate in the meals program, both to increase their consumption of fruits and vegetables, but to also increase the financial solvency of the program. So if kids are still picking up a reimbursable lunch via offer versus serve, if you're picking up 3 of the 5 components, then the school district and the school nutrition department can count that as a reimbursable meal and can get that $3 for lunch. So that really helped increase participation in their program, get kids more fruits and vegetables, and help their CEP program. So they have some sample graphics with the pick 3 free, but I know it's in my email and it's not something that's on our website. So again, if you want more information on that, I'd be happy to share. I think we're about at all of the questions that came in. Again, I'm so glad to see that this was helpful. I've really enjoyed talking with you all today. Hopefully next time we can do a Zoom meeting and then I can see all of your faces. But thanks again to Donna, even though she's logged off already. We will share the PowerPoint. We'll share the, look, Tam saves the day. There's the pick 3 free graphics. So definitely click on those, and I'll stay on the line again in case any more questions pop up, and so that you can download some of these links. But I do want to reassure you, we will share the recording, we'll share the slides, we'll share all of these resources in one nice email. So you don't have to copy down everything right now. But again, thanks so much. Thanks for your commitment to feeding all kids in your schools and to exploring CEP and whether it's an option. Yes, with links, Jennifer, we'll share links too. So again, thank you all for all the work that you do. I feel lucky that I get to kind of be in this sphere with all of you wonderful school nutrition staff and support your work, but you guys are definitely doing the more important work, and any way that we can support and we can help, don't hesitate to reach out. Would love to stay in touch. So, and thank you, Tam, too, for all of your wonderful insights and for answering questions. With that, I will go ahead and put myself on mute, but if more questions come in, do feel free.